Jeremiah is just as unreliable of a narrator as Belly is. And not only that, he's also a really inconsistent character. One thing I love about this show is that you really need to read between the lines to find the true meaning of what everyone is saying. You also need to pay really close attention to what the characters say versus what the show is actually showing us. Cleveland actually told us that the narrators in the show are unreliable, and the story that they're telling us is so clearly not the real story. So this made me pay extra attention when we got Jeremiah's POV. Let's start with this narration from Jeremiah when he's justifying that his dad was actually around in the end when it counted. However, in this flashback, we saw that Jeremiah was organizing the insurance bills by himself, which is probably something that Adam should have been doing. Another fun detail is that the B plots of this show really help to explain the A plots, and Susanna being in denial about her parents' shittiness parallels how Jeremiah sees Adam. Later, Jeremiah says he wanted to tell Conrad that he had no right because he had ignored Belly all these years. However, we've seen a bunch of flashbacks of Conrad actually being really sweet and friendly with Belly. Like here, when he gave her the muffin, while Jeremiah and Steven were actually taunting Belly and keeping the muffin away from her. We also got a montage of their group photos that they took every summer, and the one thing that these have in common, notice Conrad's arm, notice it here, and also here. It's absolutely not a coincidence, and it's meant to show us that Conrad and Belly have been close and friendly all these years. We also got this flashback of Conrad teaching Belly how to dance while Jeremiah and Steven are in the back playing a game and ignoring Belly. When Belly arrived in season 1, Conrad walked up to her directly before saying hi to anybody else, and look how happy he was to see her. He also waited for Belly by the pool on the first night so that he could talk to her because he knew that she would be there. Belly got to the beach bonfire party in the first episode. Jeremiah ran up to her and said he was so happy that she was there, and then he immediately ditched her to talk to some other girls. Susanna also told us that Conrad was the only one who would let Belly tag after the boys. Emphasis on these words, only one. So that's an amazing example of Jeremiah's POV being wildly off and skewed by his anger. It could easily be his perception or how he's twisted the story in his head, but as viewers, we can understand that that is just clearly not the truth. In addition to his point of view being unreliable, he's also very inconsistent. He flip-flops a lot with what he tells people, what we actually see on screen, and I can understand how people would actually be on his side if you're not paying close enough attention to actually understand that he's often lying, and he's doing it to manipulate outcomes to be in his favor. From this conversation, we saw that Jeremiah was upset with Belly for leaving him and not supporting him through Susanna's death. He told her that he needed her and she wasn't there, and also said, "You left me." But we saw from Belly and Conrad's phone conversations that Belly told Conrad she was texting Jeremiah and hadn't heard back from him. And it was clearly upsetting her enough for Conrad to go to Jeremiah and say, "It's tearing her up that you haven't responded." And then in Jeremiah's narration, he literally told us that he had a genius plan to stay pissed at Belly and keep her at an arm's length, aka ignore her. So then in this scene, he's getting upset with Belly for not supporting him when he was the one who wasn't responding to her messages, therefore not letting her support him and getting mad at her for something that he did. We saw this sort of thing a couple of times throughout the season, like when Conrad told Jeremiah that he was in love with Belly, but he told her several times things that would make her believe that Conrad actually didn't care about her, like yelling at her that Conrad dumped her. But then in the season finale, Jeremiah was honest and told Belly, "Conrad is in love with you," which shows us once again that he knows the truth, but he chooses to withhold it when it doesn't fit his narrative or which outcome he's hoping to get. We also saw that Jeremiah was angry with Conrad a lot this season, and he acts like he doesn't understand Conrad's motives for a lot of the things that he does. Like in this scene when Jeremiah said when something's wrong, Conrad will just throw it away. But then the very next day he says, "Let someone else solve a problem for once." This shows us that Jeremiah understands Conrad's personality and that he doesn't want to burden people with problems. So instead, he is the one who's usually trying to fix things. One final thought I had about the inconsistencies of Jeremiah and his point of view being unreliable is the fact that he said he's ignored Belly all these years, which is obviously his memory and his perception of what happened in the past. But then in some later scenes, we actually get some clues that support that Jeremiah's memory is maybe a little bit fuzzy. When he's looking at pictures with Conrad, he tells Conrad that he hardly remembers all those summers, aka he hardly remembers that Conrad ignored Belly, or if he didn't. And then in this scene, when he suggested that they go to Finch while Conrad is taking his exam, Belly's response is, "I can't believe you remembered," which also suggests to us that Jeremiah just doesn't have a great memory or just doesn't pay very much attention. And I literally can't wait for Conrad's point of view next season because he literally told us in this episode, "I remember everything."